G'day and welcome to this week's FriBaT, Friday Beers and Tools with Andy. This week, back to full strength beer. And we have a Tasmanian brew. This one is Tasmanian IPA from Morrison Brewery here in Tassie. Funnily enough, Tasmanian IPA, who would have thought? This has a 6% ABV, so we're going back with a vengeance. What do Morrison Brewery have to say about their West Coast style IPA? Super tropical, mango and guava, some white peach, slightly peppery. Chewy caramel malts. How do they get chewy? Chewy caramel malts. If it's a caramel flavour, I get it, but how do you get chewy caramel? Chewy caramel malts, bitter finish. Don't like a real bitter beer, but it's an IPA, so I'm sure it'll be fine. Happy Friday. Super tropical. Mango. White peach. No, not really. Slightly peppery. Yeah, slightly peppery. A little bit of caramel. Chewy caramel. So I still don't know how they come up with chewy caramel, but anyway. And it does have a slightly bitter finish, but not excessively so. Some people like really bitter beers. I'm not a big fan of really bitter beers, but that's still very nice. That's a pretty good IPA. On my Spanner scale, I would give that a solid 4 out of 5 for an IPA, and happy to support Tasmanian businesses. Alrighty, this week we have another Amazon tool, and being an old school Eleco and technician and well, I do a lot of crap actually, but anyway, set of good crimpers for, and there's not just one set of crimpers that does all, unfortunately. You need a decent set of crimpers for insulated terminals, and also a decent set of crimpers for uninsulated terminals. You can use the very cheap Super Champs. I'll put a picture up here of what they look like. You can get them from, cheap stores like Super Cheap Auto and things like that. And they're not real good. They do the job, and they're probably handy to have in your toolkit to throw in the car for when you're going touring or whatever, but they don't do the best quality crimps on non-insulated terminals. So I was looking for a decent set of crimpers for non-insulating terminals, and I came across these on Amazon, and this is the iWis brand, and they have a very good feedback rating on Amazon, 4.5 stars, and these are designed for non-insulated open barrel terminal crimps. They can also be used for Molex, Delphi, AMP, Tyco, Harley, PC Computer, and automotive 24 to 14 American wire gauge. So let's take them out of the box and give you a bit of a closer look, and I'll put a photo up here if it's clearer, which it probably will be. On the crimp jaws, you can see there is a number of sizes, and they correspond to the size of the wire that you're crimping. So we've got 16 to 14, 18 to 14, 20 to 18, 24 to 20, and 24 to 22. Now remember, wire gauges, the larger the number, the smaller the gauge. Most stuff that we do on vehicles is around 18 gauge, 18 to 20 gauge, so they're the most common sizes used there. Interestingly, these are non-ratcheting crimpers. They have a little locking tab here. So all they do is crimp to the force that you apply to them, and the jaws then close completely on themselves. And you can see that the tiny holes that are left there, that is what crimps down. All right, so what are we talking about non-insulated crimps? Well, typical non-insulated crimp will look something like that. That is your blade type female crimp, and you'll notice that it has two crimping surfaces. The longer one on the end here crimps down onto the insulation, and the shorter one is what actually crimps down and gives you your mechanical and electrical connection here. So it's a two-stage process. Now, this is probably going to be a little bit hard to film, so bear with me while I set up. Hello, dog. Having a good pair of wire strippers is also very handy. So I'm using 16 gauge wire today. So therefore we're going to use the top jaws here, and I prefer to set the crimp into the jaw, and again, quite difficult to film. Actually, before we do that, I like to give these ones just a little bit of a push in at the top here. Once you've got your crimps seated, and again it's difficult to show, but see I'm seated on the forward jaws there, then you can insert your wire. Again, this is difficult for me to do. Once you've got your crimp inserted to the right position, insert your wire so that the insulation is up against the second part but not down inside the jaws that you're crimping, and then give them a good squeeze and remove the crimp. Now, to do the top part, which actually secures the insulation, again I like to give those just a little bit of a helping hand start, and usually using the next size up to crimp. Then we give it a tug, make sure it is secure, and that's the finished crimp. And you can see, once again, difficult to show, but you see how it's folded the two edges over onto the insulation. This one's not quite as neat, probably could redo that on the smaller setting now. So let's give that a try. That's a better job. Much better than the cheap Super Champ type crimpers. There are a few different versions of these. Like I said, you can get the ratcheting versions, and they are also very good. It depends on how much you want to spend. Coming back to these ones from Amazon, these cost me $43, and you can spend $60, $70 on a decent set of crimpers. So these are pretty good sort of mid-range value. These are the iWis 1424A, and I'll put a link down in the description below. All right, so what's my verdict on the iWis crimpers for non-insulated crimps? Value for money, $42. It seems to be fairly average sort of price for a decent set of crimpers. They are likely to be made in China, and you can spend a lot more money on high quality named brand crimpers. However, these will do almost everything that you need to do with non-insulated crimps. So for value for money, $42, it's not the cheapest thing that you can throw into your toolbox. And like I said, you can get a very cheap pair of Super Champs to throw in your toolbox for in your car or whatever. But I would recommend, if you're doing a lot of non-insulated crimps, to get a decent pair of crimpers like these, and you will get a much better quality, much more secure connection. So for value for money, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 beers. For functionality, as you can see, they are a little bit fiddly and they do take a little while to get used to how they operate and what position you need to have the crimp in, and you probably do need to do a couple of test crimps with the size of the wire that you want to make sure that you are using the right size. There is a bit of variance, and as you can see with the gauge of the wire for each crimp hole, it does vary quite a bit. So sometimes you do have to do a little bit of test and adjust to find which one works for you. But once you do, you get a very good secure connection, and then that makes it worthwhile having a set. So for functionality, they're not the easiest things in the world to use if you're not used to doing electrical connections. They're probably, let's go, I'm going to go 4 out of 5 for functionality. The ratcheting crimpers are probably slightly better, but probably for most of us not worth the extra money. So I can recommend these ones. They're actually a pretty good bit of gear. Rightio. Well, another week's roll around and another FriBaT is done. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and hit me with some comments, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.